All around Castle Staves, the forests were burnt and the snows were sprinkled with blood and bullet casings. Inside, the crew traded places in the pile, gaining morsels of sleep, and ate the last of the packaged mush they had captured on their journey in space. They had won every battle, but had nothing to show for it. They simply had to wait for Fumiko to report that the Tanaka drive was done disentangling, which would allow key components to be moved to their ship. Ah yes, they didn't have a ship anymore. Well, that was the weakness of their plan that Boy was forbidding anyone from mentioning, not that they really wanted to. A day after the magnificent destruction of the latest IPA landing force, something strange happened. During the afternoon, a dark shadow swept over the castle. It was like an eclipse, only the sun was still there, burning with the orange of a winter evening. It was like someone had painted the image of a sunset over the truly dark night sky. In fact, it was a lot like that. "The IPA ship. It must be," Polo said, focused on the too easy to stare at image of the sun, feeling none of its heat. "What? More magic?" Boy asked. "We have to go." "Why?" "It's dark because the sky is being blocked. We're just seeing an illusion because of a cloaking field. You get it now?" "What? They're making a roof over us?" "Boy, I think he means their ship," Lady whispered to him. Boy suddenly realized what was going on. "So, it's right, like, wonk?" Staves nodded and threw another snowball into the air. It fell down peacefully. "We're safe," he concluded. Huntsman decided to test a little further, just to be sure. He pulled back an arrow with a Zospa longbow and let it whistle off into the sky. The arrow suddenly turned to the side with a faint clink, then fell back down nearby. "Trucking! We're going!" Holt decided. "The drive. Fumiko, tell me it's done," Boy called. Just around the corner, Fumiko was half inside said drive, rooting around. She called for patience, but the crew started arguing loudly about the merits of getting out of there. It was pointed out quite soundly that the IPA weren't currently killing them. It was also pointed out that they probably parked the ship there as part of a plan that did indeed involve killing them. The back and forth was sidelined when Fumiko entered the fray with a strange disc in her hands. It was the size of a large dinner plate and changed colour continuously, the change accelerating if you moved your eyes over its surface. When she moved it in her hands, it became a flickering rainbow of every colour in detailed, ever-changing patterns. "This is what you wanted?" she smiled. "That's the button that this was about?" Huntsman asked. "Entanglement manifold," Polo said. "Beautiful. Is it empty?" "It is now," Fumiko said. "Now, that's good timing. I mean, it wasn't that good." "Yeah, it is. We need to get out of here right now." "I know. I mean that it wasn't quite empty."
"Wait, does that mean it's gonna blow up?"
Tucker asked, unable to tear herself away from the colourful marble.
"You purged the momentum, right?"
Polo said, stepping right up to Fumiko.
"Yes." "Where?"
"Into the ground."
How are we still alive?"
Polo moaned. "Ask the Overlord, we're going, and we'll take the Hillicat with us," Boy said. "Load up the shuttle." "Ain't they just gonna blow us out of the trucking sky if we fly right under 'em?" Holt asked.
"Holt, trust me, that doesn't matter. She purged the momentum into the ground,"
Polo said with deliberate focus.
"I thought we had to,"
Fumiko protested.
"We do, you're right, come on,"
Lady said, pushing her by the shoulders towards the shuttle.
"It was only a little bit,"
Fumiko added, but no one was listening now. There was a mad rush to grab personal effects and a few useful bits and bobs, while Polo started up the cargo shuttle, which resembled by then a pile of snow up against the castle wall. Everyone kept looking up at what was supposedly just an image of the sky, projected by the huge snaking colony ship locked in place and arrows flight above them. "Why are we in a hurry?" Staves asked, whipping up his slow shells into a bundle. "Sounds like the IPA traitor did something sneaky after all," Boy said.
So, shouldn't we leave her here?
Pretty good point. Wait, guys, why are we even listening to her? This is a trick, isn't it?
Yes, it is,
Fumiko said from inside the shuttle, stuck under a pile of dogs.
The momentum will accelerate history. I trusted you to save me, if I saved you. I've done my bit. But we can't tell what you did, and it sounds like you're trying to kill us, that's all, Staves explained. Not my fault, you're stupid. It is a little bit. Move, come on!
Paulo shouted at them. He almost knocked Staves over as he ran up with some bits of computer equipment and threw them into the shuttle.
Stop, Shaman,
Kerma said to him, grabbing him by the jacket.
What is going to happen? Tell us. We are going to win,
Fumiko grinned in the darkness.
It's, I guess you'd call it a roll-up,
Paulo said.
You think you could sweet-talk me like that? I'm not so easy anymore,
Kerma said. Well, me and the other butters don't want to get rolled up in any sense of it, and we're done here anyway. No point waiting around to see what the fake Sky's got brewing, Huntsman reasoned, throwing his bag through the shuttle doors. Empty hollows, just move it, Boy shouted. With this, everyone got into the shuttle with whatever they were carrying. The chassis shuddered and threw off the blanket of snow.
Think they'll chase us? Lady asked. Technically they're not after us, but probably yeah,
Paulo said, working the controls at the front of the cramped compartment. Some lights and a heater turned on, making it a little more bearable. Can we see if they're following? Holt asked. Don't open the door, Boy shouted at Kerma, whose hand had gone immediately to the relevant handle.
Just hold, we'll burn off all the fuel and head for the mainland,
Paulo said. He pressed some buttons, and everything was thrown to the back of the shuttle. Easier to handle than going to escape velocity straight up, at least. Fumiko clung to the entanglement manifold, now wrapped in her IPA-branded black pullover. They flew low and fast off the peninsula and over the seas towards the supercontinent, only 10 minutes away, although their fuel reserves wouldn't last much longer than that. Did the IPA clock any of this? Well, of course they did track the shuttle leaving the base, and noted that all the thermal signatures moving around had gone with it. They were far more interested in getting down to the Taneka drive than getting revenge on those stubborn malignants. After all, as Fumiko liked to remind everyone, the IPA's victory on that front was only a matter of a century or two. No hurry. An IPA shuttle flew down to hover near the castle. They weren't afraid to open the doors while airborne, especially as it allowed them to carefully pick off the turrets on the ground. Then the shuttle landed, and did something rather old school for a space-conquering military government. They brought out some retractable ladders and leant them against the castle walls to get in. A group of 6 soldiers confirmed the place was empty, and shared a laugh at the ramshackle wooden constructs. Their leader went over to the Tanaka drive and inspected it. As usual, it was unassuming, just a cold grey rhomboid of metal. They are experts at war, the savages, he said. Avoiding their malignance was key. Look at this place. They were waiting for us. They knew so much, even about the Johnson Tanaka drive. The dictatorate should have sent us 100 years ago.
Drive's still tied up, only at 0.08 though, another said. Something's off though. It's like the neutrinos are being reflected off the ground, maybe. The trajectories don't seem right. Did they do something to it?
Not our job to find out. Call the ship down. This redoubt will be a good site for a security team. We can land there in that area that was burned.
As you wish. I'll call it in.
We'll let Technical handle the momentum. We are supposed to be doing seizure shifts.
Yeah. I was getting hungry anyway. Stupid Rim devils.
After this, the IPA took their leisurely time securing the area and finding specialists on their crew to bring down and try to get the last entangled momentum out of the drive. Little did they realize how the flow of neutrinos from the soil below the drive was steadily accelerating, the byproduct of a certain quantum ruse beginning to unravel. Meanwhile, a flying box of chances carried on its surprisingly peaceful escape. Once over land again, they slowed to a cruise and managed to get another hour's travel out of the uranium pods. There weren't too many places that could get them, but it was just enough for one spot in particular. Therefore, the shuttle bumped down into the sandy river beach of the last castle, clanking against collapsed windmills and churning up snapped blowwork piping. The door jetted open, and all was quiet. It was 9 o'clock in the evening, and a comfy 16 degrees even in midwinter on the Comariero Plateau. The dogs had no trouble jumping out to sniff around, but the others found themselves overcome by exhaustion.
They really didn't kill us,
Staves noted. It took some believing.
I don't hear anything coming,
Paulo said.
They must have got their hands full with the drive. The neutrinos will still be visible, right? It will look wrong if they know what they're doing, Fumiko said.
Then what? Boy said.
Then they should run away. It was only an idea. I don't know what will happen.
I know. We should find out if there's anything good still to eat out here, Holt said, the first to pull himself out onto the sand. The buildings of the castle were still locked up tight, surprisingly unlooted. A few stacks of dehydrated food meant for the lost Tetius garrison was there for the taking in the larder. Everyone gathered in the dining hall, and after just a little fiddling, Staves got the lights working off a remaining operational windmill. It was party time.
We've come so far. We've got... Could this be it?
Lady asked Boy. They were looking at the omni-coloured entanglement manifold on the table. I know a Hillicat when I see it, and this is what it was all for, Boy claimed.
You think everything is holy, Kerma sneered. That twisted plate is just a toy. No, it's a key, Paulo said. The key to escaping. We have to build a drive. But that's just a matter of constructing an ion engine.
Yeah, do that all the time, Boy remarked.
It's possible. The time, that's the issue. It depends on what happens to the IPA.
We even gonna know that? Huntsman asked. I mean, either they show up and kill us all or they don't. Let's try and do the thing since we went through all the butternut to get the butternut and all that butternut butter.
Anything we need, we'll find it, Tokka declared. As long as she isn't really betraying us,
she added, glaring at Fumiko. Fumiko spruced her twin-tailed hair with both hands.
I wish I was, sometimes,
she said with a smile.
What's that mean?
Tokka demanded, but Fumiko seemed quite amused in saying no more.
I really thought it would be over by now,
Lady said quietly.
We've done so much, and all the loss. Can we really escape that Kote?
Starlight, gotta keep that chin up, Huntsman said. It's been hard, no doubt about that. Doesn't have to get harder though. Seems like the world isn't ending after all. Just gonna be harassed by a few new vacuum pushers instead of the old. We'll be dead by the time this story ends. So for our part, let's just do what we want. And if you off-worlders want to go home, and if this magic disc's got what it takes, then what's the point moping here like greens in a galley? I'm up for seeing this nut through to the very end. Sounds like work, but what doesn't? Not like we can get another spaceship handed to us on a plasticsteel platter or whatever and whatever. You'll never guess what happened at that moment. A large whooshing sound accompanied a shaking of the walls. A sudden gust of wind crossed the castle. Then an earthquake. The ground rumbled for perhaps 10 seconds, and the sound of 1,000 thunderclaps resounded deafeningly outside. Then all fell still again.
Shall I go see what that was?
Staves offered. All were in agreement. Staves returned after just a few minutes with a smile on his overly haggard face.
My girlfriend's boyfriend was wrong, this time,
he said. No point getting into what that meant exactly, as the real point became clear when everyone else went outside. Just west of the castle, a huge track had been carved in the desert, bisecting the stone road and obliterating exposed banks of rock. Trees burned in the darkness, revealing the silhouette of something rather large parked at the end of this track. Large and saucer-shaped, glowing faintly with the residual heat of its long fall. This, if you hadn't gathered, was the gift that Issa and Est had spent their final moments preparing for the Chancers, the forward section of the IPA battleship. All it needed was a little touch-up, a crew, and some engines. "Overlord be praised!" Boy called to the heavens.
Save some for those OPA women. We wouldn't be anywhere without those two,
Polo said.
And Shar as well. We're really cashing in on everyone else's achievements. Easier to believe it's all just some overlord, isn't it?
Fumiko mocked.
Not here for your philosophy lesson. But I'm grateful for you too. You've saved us just as much as the rest. Unless, well, that purged momentum hasn't caused any trouble yet. By the way, I wasn't joking. I wish I could defy probability.
Then join the party. This is out of control, Holt remarked. In the morning, the full picture was clear. The whole saucer section of the battleship was intact, although parts of the underside were worse for wear after the crash landing. Inside, the blowwork was all functioning, controls were responding, albeit with no engines to talk to, and perhaps most importantly, the ship was equipped with cryopods. The craft was designed to be an escort for the colony ship, and as such could take a small crew into stasis for interstellar journeys. Well, we happen to know a small crew with such ambitions, don't we? What are the bloody chances of this? Doesn't matter anymore, because it already happened. Now the Chances had another job on their hands, but it had been cut down from a matter of years to a matter of weeks by the spoils of cosmic war. The entanglement manifold needed to be placed into a wiry receiver to pick up the ship's momentum and beam it off to distant locales, which was actually ingeniously simple. It would work on just about any engine and any ship. Anything that moved could be tricked into thinking it wasn't moving via the momentum-sharing magic, which meant that no additional energy was needed to accelerate it, which meant you could go just about as fast as space-time allowed, without too much fuel and without getting trapped in a labyrinth of time dilation effects. It was really just a matter of figuring out how to plug it in, which Fumiko seemed to roughly understand. Everyone else worked on adding new quarters to the ship remains, stocking it up with food and such, and trying to remember what Issa and Est had taught them about vacuum sealing the hull. Only Staves didn't participate in this, as he was busy over at the old Heresy Cave. Instead, he spent his time hammering away at the rock face beneath a grubby sheet, working on something secret, as he explained it, which was Staves' usual state of affairs anyway. Over the next 4 days, the castle became less and less habitable, as materials were scavenged for the ship. There was much talk of this purged momentum they had fled from, and what it actually meant. Fumiko seems to have an idea of what would happen, but wouldn't let it slip, while Polo was very paranoid and wouldn't stop letting everyone know about it. At nightfall, the moment of truth came. Far away, one of the IPA's scientific specialists finally yanked the back off the drive, and saw the gap full of loose spindles where the entanglement manifold was supposed to be. The aghast technician looked from the empty space to a computer screen, detailing the presence of entangled momentum somewhere nearby. They pulled a handheld device from a bag and pointed it first at the ground, then the sky. Then, seeing the readings, they fell to their knees and shakily threw the device away. As the number of neutrinos spewing from the ground tended towards infinity, the last specks of excess momentum left at 100 distant stars time hopped back to its proper medium via the collapse of the stable entanglement network. That is to say, quite a lot of pure energy was suddenly transferred into the ground below the Tanaka drive, thanks to Fumiko's little hack. How much of a big deal this was depended on how much momentum we're talking about, which was pretty much impossible to judge for either Fumiko or the IPA at that point. Turns out Fumiko overshot her goal by a little. Back in the last castle, a brilliant light appeared on the horizon, as if the sun had changed its mind and returned to cast a few more rays. It lasted a full minute, then faded away.
That was it, wasn't it?
Polo said. He was standing on the roof of the IPA ship, staring at the faint afterglow peeking up from further around the planet. That could have been worse, Holt sighed from nearby, going straight back to sanding materials off the repaired hull plates. Then, the whole ship began to shake, probably because the ground below them was doing the same. This seismic shock was just the beginning of the disentanglement's effects. That forgotten peninsula the drive was hidden on had ceased to exist in an instant. The whole area had been torn up from the planet's crust and vaporized into its base elements, which then rode a great shockwave up and away in all directions. A vast grey cloud, a continent of debris in the sky, loomed over the eastern seas of Reticot. To the Chancers, it didn't look like much that night. They all clambered up onto the ship to take a look once the earthquakes died down, yet there was nothing over the horizon to see. "That was your plan?" Boy asked Fumiko.
Just an idea,
Fumiko reminded him. "And did it work?"
I think it did work. The IPA was there. You killed them, that's what you did, right?
Lady asked.
I saved you all a lot of trouble. Them too, I think,
Fumiko said, growing quiet. "A massive explosion. Gets Butternut done, doesn't it?" Huntsman commented.
Not an explosion, a transfer of momentum stacked up with more time debt than Einstein thought imaginable,
Paulo said.
No, Paulo, it was an explosion,
Staves assured him, putting an arm around him. "And a pretty good one at that. Looks like our captive wasn't taking us for a ride after all. Maybe," Holt said.
No, you can't have an explosion like that on a planet's surface,
Tucker insisted.
It's dangerous even in space. In an atmosphere, it moves material into low orbit. This won't end well.
"What do you mean? The IPA are dead, and we're free to go," Boy said.
For Redicott, the climate will be changed,
Tucker said.
She's right, Paulo said. Dust, the lost water, it's going... Man, albedo up, irradiance down. The planet might not...
"Spit it out, what's going on?" Holt demanded.
Some kind of ice age.
"It never stops, not even once, this Kote Baranat," Huntsman said.
We can survive ice. All Kotes can be survived,
Kerma said.
But this is real. A real roll-up,
Paulo said.
The planet has rolled up before. We survived,
Kerma replied, although less sure of it.
What are we supposed to do?
Lady asked. "We know what we're doing, don't we?" Boy said. "What about her?" Huntsman said of Fumiko. "She'll get this ship in the air, then it's up to her." "That's not the end of all this though," Holt said. "The real roll-up. An age of ice. Huh. So that's the price of getting rid of the IPA? And the OPA to boot."
We can get readings from orbit. Find out how bad it's going to be,
Paulo said.
No point giving up.
"No one said a single thing about giving up, Butter," Huntsman said. "Why don't we spare a thought for that IPA ship going on its merry way? That's the end of a lot of grudges down here. As for the land rolling up into the sky, well, that's something else. Always us saving this pace-pushing world, isn't it? Let's get some shut-eye, then do it again." Amid seismic aftershocks and rapidly forming clouds racing overhead from the east, the night was concluded. In one fell swoop, the remaining core of the IPA task force was gone, freeing both the Chancers and all of Reticot to make their own way in the cosmos for the time being. As for what way they would go, that's the final question our tale shall attend to.